Hi, I'm Paul.
And I'm Hazel.
And welcome to Skip the Rulebook, your lamplight through the mineshafts of the rulebook to the gold seam of your new game.
Today we are staking our claim in Awesome. In this game you ride the rails and open top minecart, hoping to grab more than your share of silver and gold, while dodging and shunting your opportunistic opponents.
Time to dig for victory. Let's skip the rulebook. Won't need this. During the game, you'll be hurtling around a mine that's constructed from a series of tiles. These are more than just a play area though, as the direction of the tracks will make the difference between profit and careering into a wall and losing your hard-dug wealth. The minecarts are not only used to get around the mine, but also to carry your stash of shiny ore.
The wooden cubes represent the various materials found in a frontier mine: gold, silver and copper. These can be traded in throughout the game for dollars. These are the means by which you'll judge your progress and ultimately win. They come in various denominations from $1 all the way up to $50.
Mines are not held up by greed alone, and the wooden beams would keep you alive, if only they didn't keep falling on the track. While you would think that making your riches in the Wild West would be a nice civilised affair, the action cards ensure that there will be no small amount of foul play and dirty tricks afoot.
All the gold ore in the world won't help unless you can find someone to flog it to. The Baron Pierce and Ma Cortland, who has a fancy feather hat, will wander through the mines throughout the game, offering you contracts in the form of cards. These will make you more money than if you just sell your goods on the open market. We also have a round marker, the bank, and round summary cards to remind you of available actions during your turn.
The dice will determine your speed as you trundle or career through the mine. Finally, we have the character cards. These are not used during gameplay, but they do add a nice thematic element to the game.
Awesome is a novel game with dexterity and push your luck elements that can be played with between 2 and 5 players. Begin by selecting your starting player and passing the starting tile. Then each person chooses a character. I'm going to go for Zoe because she looks like a badass, and the corresponding cart and die.
To construct the board, begin by placing the mineshaft tile in the centre of the play area. There are a number of coloured tiles that match the colours of the player tokens, 2 for each colour. Begin by placing the coloured corner tokens such that you will produce a 5x5 grid. It's important to note that you use all 4 of these tiles even in games with less than 4 players. Each player should then also be given a coloured mine tile matching the colour of an opposing player. They should place this beside them for now.
Shuffle the remaining tiles and place them face down next to the board. We then have to construct the mine. To do this, we either choose to draw from the top of this deck or choose to place down our coloured tiles. When placing tiles, you must connect it to an existing piece so that the track on the edge matches up the tiles adjacent to it, ensuring that you stay within the 5x5 area defined by the corners.
When it's your turn to place a tile, you can elect instead to place the coloured tile you were given earlier. These pieces are valuable to the player who matches that colour, so think about putting it in a position where it's going to make life difficult for them. If, due to the placement of the other tiles in the mine, the piece you draw doesn't fit anywhere, you simply discard it and draw a new one. If the tiles in the mine have been placed such that no remaining tile will fit, then you may remove one from the mine and replace it with a new one. If, once the mine is constructed, any of the coloured tiles haven't been placed, then the player of that colour can remove one of the tiles from the board and replace it with their own. Any unused tiles are then placed back in the box.
Each player should place their card on the corner that matches their colour. Then, place the bank card and the coins next to the board. Shuffle the contract cards and deal each player one card from each deck, and then place these next to the bank card.
Place all of the wooden cubes into the ore bag and give it a shake to shuffle them up. Then place it next to the board along with the wooden beams. Shuffle the action cards deck and deal 3 cards to each player. Then place the remainder of the deck face down next to the board to form the draw pile.
Next, place the Ma and Baron, who either has a really big hat or a really big moustache piece in the centre on the mine shaft, and give each player a reference card.
The game length is chosen by the players before you begin play. You have the option of 6 or 8 turns. Once you've decided on how long a game you would like, place the card on the correct side with the marker token on the number 1. We're now ready to seek our fortunes. The aim of Awesome is simple. Be the player at the end of the game with the most money, in this case at the end of turn 6. Each turn is broken into 2 phases, the move phase and dig phase. In the move phase, all players complete a move action, beginning with the first player. We then move on to the dig phase. Once all players have completed their dig actions, the turn ends, and the first player marker moves to the next player clockwise.
There are a number of actions that must be completed during a normal move phase, but the first round is kept fairly simple. Each player must pick up their die and roll simultaneously. 3. You must then move the same number of tiles as that's shown on your die. When moving your cart, you must follow the track and thus can only move between tiles with connected rails. Your cart also can't change direction during one movement phase, and thus you can't move forwards and backwards in one turn.
During your turn, you also have the option of playing one of your action cards. These are split into 3 types, which tells you roughly when and how they can be used. During the move phase, you can play all 3 types: move, dig, and surprise cards. I'm going to start by playing my Whack the Lever card. This allows me to change direction once during my turn, something you're not normally allowed to do. That means I can move my cart forward, like so, and then backwards, in order to take a different route down this tile that I would not normally be allowed to take.
During the dig phase, you have a number of actions you may complete. I'll begin by digging for ore, and I'm going to take 2 random cubes from the bag. If you are on your own coloured tile, then you take 4 cubes instead. Place them into your cart. You are not allowed to rearrange the cubes in your cart when adding new cubes. This becomes particularly important later on when your cart starts to fill up. If, when you're adding cubes, they start to fall out into the mine, then you leave them where they fell. If they fell out of the mine, then you put them on the closest tile. It's important to note, though, that this only applies to your own cart. If cubes happen to fall out of the other player's cart when you shunt them along, then they can place those back into their cart. Now that I'm loaded up for loot, I now need to sell it for some cash. I can do this in one of 2 ways, either by completing a contract or by cashing in at the bank. Now I'm going to choose to cash in at the bank, so I need to empty my cart in front of me, and I'm going to place the ore cubes that I want to sell on the bank card for all to see, and then I collect the money equal to the prices shown on the card. So in this case, I gain $2 for my silver and $1 for my copper. Then any remaining ore is placed back in the cart. My ore that I've sold is going to go back into the bag. Ore cubes don't count as dropped during this phase.
During the dig phase, you also have the option of picking up any or all of the cubes on the tile occupied by your cart. This will be ore that's been dropped earlier in the game. You're only allowed to do this once per tile, which normally means once per turn, although certain action cards do change this. The other way to make cash is by completing contracts. The contract cards have on them the type and number of cubes required to complete them. If you have the correct cubes and are within 4 tiles of the correct contract agent, you can complete one of these contracts. Simply reveal the card that you want to complete, empty your cart, and place the correct ore onto the card. Those cubes are then placed back into the bag, and the completed contract face down in front of you. Any unused cubes are then placed back into your cart. As I sadly don't have enough cubes at the moment, I'm going to save them for next turn. You may only play 1 contract per turn. Contracts are arguably the better way to make money, but they do come with a risk, as you must keep more ore in your cart, which means you run the risk of dropping some. As with the move phase, you have the opportunity to play an action card. During the dig phase, you're only allowed to play dig and surprise cards. I'm going to play a cave-in. This allows me to place one of the wooden beams anywhere on the board. If I place it between two tiles, then you block the connecting track. You also have the choice of placing it diagonally on a tile, which blocks all tracks on that tile.
Once the turn is over, move the round marker forward one, and then pass on the first player tile. Each player may then choose to discard up to 5 cards from their hand and draw up to 5, so Paul can now pick up 1 extra card to replenish his hand.
From the second turn onwards, there are a couple of extra steps we must complete in the movement phase. First of those is moving the contract agents in search of their riches. They move up to 3 tiles following these rules. Baron Pierce moves towards the cart with the most ore, in this case me. Mark Cortland conversely moves towards the cart with the least ore, in this case Hazel. During the game, it is likely, through playing more action cards, that more beams will fall into the mine. If this happens, your cart can become trapped. Being trapped simply means that there's no clear route along tracks to the central mineshaft tile. During your movement phase, you can elect not to move and instead dig yourself free by removing some of those beams. Simply roll your die and then remove that number of wooden beams from the board. If the contract agents ever become trapped, then you must pick them up and place them onto the central mineshaft tile. As with last turn, we continue by rolling our dice and then starting with the first player moving that many squares. If, while moving your cart, you knock any of the cubes out, then you leave it on the tile on which it landed.
Paul is currently sat on his own coloured tile, so he's going to do pretty well in the dig phase unless I can stop him. Luckily, I do have a cunning plan. During my turn, I can elect to shunt another player. This occurs anytime you move onto a tile that already has another player's cart on it. First off, if the shunted cart has any cubes visible above the top of the cart, one of these cubes must be dropped on the tile currently occupied by the player. Next, the shunted cart is moved 1 tile forward by the current player, following the normal movement rules. I can choose to keep moving forward, shunting the player again, following the same rules as before for each tile I force the cart to move. It's even possible to shunt 1 cart into another cart, and this third cart would follow the same rules as before in terms of cube dropping and movement. If, while shunting another player, their cart happens to come to the end of the mine or a wooden beam and they come to a standstill, they may potentially lose more cubes if they happen to be visible above the top of the cart. All carts behind the shunted one will also potentially lose cubes if they're visible.
It's possible, because of the roll on the die and the direction of the track, that you're forced into a position where your cart would leave the mine or go into a tile that's blocked by a beam. If this happens, you must stop your cart and then check to see whether you drop a cube by seeing whether the cubes in your cart are higher than the top. In the dig phase, I again take some ore. I now have a chance to cash it in. This turn, I have enough cubes to complete my contract for Mark Cortland. I take my cart and empty it, then place the correct cubes onto the card. Any remaining cubes then go back into my cart. Once all players are confident that I have indeed completed my contract, the cubes go back into the bag, and the completed contract goes face down in front of me. It is possible that once you've emptied your cart, you have in fact not got enough cubes of the right colour to complete the contract. Perhaps you miscounted or simply didn't adjust for the one that you dropped during your turn. If this happens, all of your cubes must be put back into your cart in a specific order. Copper first, then silver, and finally gold. This means that all your valuable stuff is on top and ripe for a shunt.
Once the final turn is completed, all players sell off their remaining ore to the bank and total up the value of their cash with the value of their completed contracts. The player with the highest total wins.
That's it from us at Skip the Rulebook. If you found this video useful, please press like. If you want to hear more from Skip the Rulebook, hit subscribe. You can also find out more about us on Facebook, Twitter, and skiptherulebook.com.
Join us next time for your chance to jump into that new board game of yours without having to do any of that tedious rule reading.
See you later. During the game, you'll be hoitling. No, you won't.
Hoitling.
It's so shiny.
And I said ass.
These will be blah, 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 blah.
Is that Mrs. Doubtfire or something? Or Kermit the Frog?
When it's your turn to place a pile, you can... No. No, it isn't.
That was just bleh. Normal movement rules.
All right, Shatner. That'll do.